The last sliver of twilight clung to the peaks of the Whisperwind Mountains, painting them in hues of violet and rose before surrendering to the deep indigo of the night. In Hearthlight Valley, nestled in the protective curve of those ancient murmuring giants, the evening air grew cool and sweet, carrying the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint, comforting aroma of hearth smoke. Elara lay tucked into her bed, a quilt spun from moon-moth silk pulled up to her chin. Her window, framed by the gnarled branches of an old slumber oak, offered a perfect view of the heavens beginning to prickle with the first shy stars. But it wasn't the stars that held her gaze, not tonight. It was the wind. Not just any wind, but hithy whispering. To others in Hearthlight, it was merely the evening breeze, a cool current descending from the mountain passes, rustling the leaves of the ancient trees, and carrying the scent of distant bloom moss. But to Elara, the whispering was a living, breathing entity. It spoke in a language woven from the sighs of the forest, the murmur of the river, and the very memories of the land. She had heard it since she was a babe, a symphony of forgotten stories and half-sung dreams that only she seemed to truly discern. Tonight, the whispering was different. It usually began with a gentle hum, a sleepy lullaby that eased the valley into slumber. But tonight, there was an edge to it, a subtle dissonance, like a single string out of tune in a grand orchestra. It pulsed, not just through the air but through the very floorboards beneath her bed, up into her bones. Her mother, Lyra, entered the room, a soft glow lantern in her hand, its light the color of captured fireflies. Lyra had hair like spun moonlight, and eyes that held the quiet wisdom of the valley itself. She smiled, a gentle curve of lips that smoothed away Elara's brow. "Still awake, little stargazer." Lyra's voice was as soft as the rustle of willow leaves. She sat on the edge of Elara's bed, her warmth a familiar comfort. Elara nodded, her gaze still fixed on the window. "The whispering, Mama. It's humming a different song tonight." Lyra's smile softened further. She brushed a stray strand of hair from Elara's face. "Is it now? And what song does it sing for you, my heart?" "It feels restless," Elara whispered, choosing her words carefully. It was hard to explain. How could she tell her mother that the rhythm of the valley's heart, which pulsed through the whispering, felt uneven, a beat skipped here, a hurried thrum there, like it's searching for something it can't quite find? Lyra's eyes, usually so serene, held a flicker of something Elara couldn't quite name. Perhaps recognition, perhaps a faint echo of concern. "The whispering has many moods, little one. It has seen many seasons, many changes. Perhaps it merely hums of the autumn chill that will soon grace our valley." She stroked Elara's hair, a familiar, soothing gesture. "Or perhaps it carries dreams from far-off lands, dreams that are yet to settle into our sleepy Hearthlight." Elara knew her mother meant well, but she also knew this was more than just the changing seasons. The whispering was a constant, a bedrock beneath the flowing currents of time. Its song might shift in tempo or volume, but its fundamental harmony rarely wavered. Tonight, it felt as though a core note was missing, replaced by a yearning distant chord. Lyra began to hum a lullaby, an ancient tune passed down through generations of Hearthlight folk. It spoke of the valley's first settlers, of the spirits of the Whisperwind Mountains, and of the great slumber oaks that held the sky on their broad shoulders. As Lyra's voice wove through the room, Elara felt the gentle magic of it, a quiet strength that had always chased away her worries. But tonight, even her mother's song couldn't quite drown out the insistent, melancholic hum of the whispering. Eventually, Lyra kissed her forehead, extinguished the lantern, and slipped from the room, leaving Elara in the soft glow of the moon filtering through the slumber oak's leaves. Elara closed her eyes, trying to coax sleep, but the whispering refused to be ignored. It pulsed, a low thrum beneath the surface of the world, calling to her. She had always been different. Not in a way that made her stand out in the small, close-knit community of Hearthlight, but in a quiet, internal sense. Other children chased glow beetles through the twilight meadows, or skipped stones across the sky-glimmer river. Elara did too, sometimes. But mostly, she listened. She listened to the roots of the slumber oaks whose intricate network beneath the valley floor hummed with ancient stories. She listened to the sky-glimmer river, whose waters whispered of the glaciers that fed them, high in the Whisperwind peaks. And most of all, she listened to the whispering, which was the voice of it all, the grand symphony of Hearthlight. She knew the different voices of the whispering. There was the playful rustle that tickled the leaves of the aspen trees on warm summer afternoons, a sound like children giggling. There was the solemn sigh that swept through the valley after a heavy rain, carrying the scent of wet earth and rejuvenation. There was the deep, resonant drone that accompanied the full moon, a sound that made the very stones of the valley seem to glow with an inner light. But for the past few weeks, a new note had begun to weave its way into the familiar tapestry of sound. It was subtle at first, a barely perceptible tremor beneath the usual harmony. But it had grown, becoming a distinct, almost pleading whisper that seemed to emanate not from the mountains, but from somewhere deep within the valley itself. And it was always accompanied by a faint, wistful feeling, like a memory just out of reach. Elara slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent on the cool wooden floor. She pulled on her thick wool cloak, the one Lyra had woven from the fleece of mountain sheep, soft and warm. Her mother wouldn't approve of her wandering out alone in the night, but Elara felt an irresistible pull, a need to get closer to the source of this new, unsettling hum. She opened her window, pushing aside the slumber oak branches that usually offered such comforting protection. The night air was crisp, invigorating. The moon, a crescent sliver, cast long, silvery shadows across the valley. Hearthlight Village was a scattering of warm lights below, like fallen stars. Carefully, Elara climbed out, her small hands finding purchase on the rough bark of the slumber oak. She was adept at this. The tree was her oldest friend, its branches her secret pathways. She descended silently, her senses alive to the night, to the pervasive hum of the whispering. The moment her feet touched the dewy grass, the sound intensified. It wasn't just in the air now. It was in the ground, vibrating up through her soles into her very core. She followed it, her path guided by an instinct deeper than thought. She moved away from the village lights, towards the ancient heart of the valley, towards the oldest, most revered place in Hearthlight, the Great Weeping Willow. The Great Weeping Willow was not just a tree. It was a monument, a living legend. Its vast sweeping branches, thicker than any house, draped down to the ground, forming a cavernous enclosed space within its weeping boughs. Its bark was gnarled and silvered with age, its roots delving so deep they were said to touch the very core of the world. It was believed to be the oldest living thing in the valley, perhaps in the entire Whisperwind range, a silent guardian that had witnessed the dawn of Hearthlight itself. As Elara drew closer, the silver leaves of the willow shimmered in the moonlight, each one catching and reflecting the light, making the tree glow with an ethereal luminescence. And within its vast embrace, the whispering was no longer a distant hum, but a chorus, a symphony of voices, each one distinct yet intertwined. She pushed through the curtain of weeping branches, the soft leaves brushing against her face like gentle fingers. Inside, the world shifted. The air grew stiller, warmer, imbued with a faint, sweet scent she couldn't quite identify. The light was softer here, filtered through layers of leaves, creating a dappled, dreamlike space. And the sound, oh, the sound! It was immense, overwhelming, yet not frightening. It was as if she had stepped into the very heart of the whispering. Voices, countless and ancient, swirled around her. She heard the echo of laughter long past, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer from a time before Hearthlight was even a name, the gentle splash of water from a hidden spring that had long since dried. These were the memories, the echoes of the valley's history, carried on the whispering's currents. But beneath it all, that new note persisted, stronger now, more urgent. It was a single clear tone, pure and resonant, yet filled with a profound sadness. It was a lament, she realized, a soft, sorrowful call. And it seemed to be coming from the very trunk of the great weeping willow itself. Elara moved further into the natural chamber, towards the massive silvered trunk. It pulsed with a faint internal light, like a sleeping giant's heart. She reached out a hesitant hand, her fingers trembling slightly, and pressed her palm against the ancient bark. The moment her skin touched the tree, a jolt went through her, not painful, but profound. It was as if a dam had broken, and a torrent of sensation, image, and feeling flooded her mind. She saw flashes, a shimmering, intricate pattern of light, like a spiderweb spun from starlight, stretching across the valley, connecting every living thing. She saw the roots of the willow glowing faintly, reaching deep, deep into the earth, intertwining with something vast and luminous, something that pulsed with the same sad note she now heard. And then, a voice, clearer than any whisper she had ever heard, spoke directly into her mind. It wasn't in the common tongue of Hearthlight, nor in the ancient mountain dialect Elara sometimes sang in. It was a language of pure feeling, of deep, resonant chords and shimmering images. Yet, Elara understood. It spoke of a fading, a dimming. The shimmering web she had seen, the ether weave, the very fabric of magic that sustained Hearthlight and perhaps beyond, was losing its light. A vital thread, a crucial connection was fraying. And the great weeping willow, the heart of the valley, was feeling it most keenly. The sadness she had felt in the whispering intensified, now understood as the tree's own sorrow, its ancient memory of a time when the ether weave had glowed with vibrant unbroken light. The urgency she had sensed was a silent plea, a call for help. Elara pulled her hand away, her heart pounding, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The vision faded, but the knowledge remained, cold and sharp in her mind. The whispering wasn't just humming a different song, it was crying out. Hearthlight was in peril, and the source of its magic, its very lifeblood, was slowly, silently, fading away. And for some reason, the great weeping willow had chosen here to hear its desperate plea. She looked around the magical chamber, at the shimmering leaves, the ancient, silent trunk. The air was still thick with the echoes of ancient memories, but now, a new, daunting weight settled upon them. The whispering continued its mournful song, no longer just a backdrop to her life, but a direct, urgent message. It was asking something of her, something big and terrifying and utterly unknown. Elara, a girl of Hearthlight Valley, who had only ever listened, now felt a profound, undeniable sense of responsibility. The whispering had called, and she had heard. What it wanted, what she was meant to do, she did not yet know. But she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that her world had just fundamentally changed. And her journey, whatever it might be, had just begun. Her journey, whatever it might be, had just begun. Elara sat, frozen, on the edge of her small bed in the dim pre-dawn light. Her heart, usually a steady, quiet drum, now hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The urgent message from the whispering hadn't been words, not exactly, but a torrent of feeling, a profound sense of a need, a desperate hope, and an underlying current of deep, ancient sorrow. It was a call, unmistakable and utterly personal, directed at Hajiya. Palwavarian. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at her. She was just Elara, the quiet girl from Hearthlight Valley, whose biggest adventure had been exploring the farthest reaches of the berry patch. What could Ashane possibly do that was big and terrifying and utterly unknown? But beneath the fear, a different sensation began to bloom, a quiet, fierce resolve. The whispering, which had always been a gentle presence, a background hum in her life, had sought Harry out. It had shared its secret ache, its urgent plea. And she, who had only ever listened, now felt an undeniable pull to respond. It was as if a part of her, long dormant, had just been stirred awake. She pushed herself up, her movements quiet and deliberate. The house was still, her family deep in sleep. She wouldn't wake them, not yet. This was her secret, her burden, and her strange new purpose. She moved to the small wooden chest at the foot of her bed, pulling out her warmest cloak, a sturdy wool, woven by her grandmother, the color of twilight forest. Into a simple satchel, she packed a few slices of her mother's fresh-baked bread, a small flask of spring water, and a handful of dried berries. Her most precious possession, a small, worn compass that had belonged to her adventurous great-aunt and was said to always point true north, found its way into her pocket. Before she left, she took a piece of parchment and a charcoal stick. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote, "Dearest family, the whispering has called to me. I must go. Do not worry. I will return. Elara." It was brief, perhaps too brief, but it was all she could manage. She left it on her pillow, knowing her mother would find it when the sun rose. With one last glance at the familiar, comforting room, Elara slipped out into the cool, still air of the pre-dawn. The stars were still bright, though a faint blush of rose was beginning to paint the eastern sky. The air smelled of damp earth and pine. She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath, letting the clean air fill her lungs and steady her beating heart. The familiar path to the edge of Hearthlight Valley, usually a pleasant stroll, now felt like the threshold of a new world. Each step was a commitment, severing her from the life she had known. As she passed the last familiar landmark, the old gnarled oak that marked the valley's boundary, she felt the whispering grow stronger, a gentle, guiding hum that seemed to vibrate in the very air around her. It wasn't a push, but a soft, insistent pull, like an invisible thread unwinding before her. She entered the Whispering Woods, a place she had explored countless times, but now it felt different. The trees, usually just green and brown, seemed to shimmer with a faint inner light. The air was thick with ancient scents, and the rustle of leaves was no longer just the wind, but a chorus of hushed voices, too soft to discern, yet full of meaning. The whispering intensified not in volume, but in clarity. It began to paint images in her mind, not words, but vivid impressions. She saw a great, luminous stone, pulsing with a gentle golden light at the heart of a vast unseen land. Then slowly, the light began to dim, fading to a dull amber, then a bruised violet. She felt the sorrow, the weakening of all things connected to it. The heartstone of Eldoria dims, the impression solidified in her mind clear as a bell. Kit's light, the lifeblood of the land, wanes. Seek the echoing grotto. Listen to the oldest voices. There, the path will reveal itself. Onia. Elara stumbled, the weight of this revelation almost knocking her off her feet. The Hearthstone of Eldoria. It was a legend, a story whispered by her grandmother, a myth of the world's very essence. To think it was real, and fading, and that Ashe was being asked to help, it was overwhelming. She sat on a moss-covered log, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The woods were quiet, save for the gentle hum of the whispering, which now felt less urgent, more like a comforting presence. As she rested, a small movement caught her eye. From beneath a patch of glowing emerald moss, a creature emerged. It was no bigger than her hand, with skin the color of forest loam and leaves, and luminous, oversized eyes that shone with an inner golden light. A crown of tiny, perfectly formed mushrooms sprouted from its head. It had delicate, branch-like fingers and toes, and moved with a curious skipping grace. The creature regarded her with an intense, unblinking gaze. It chirped, a sound like dry leaves skittering over stone, and then rustled its tiny leaf-like cloak. Though Fimble spoke in a language of rustling leaves and clicking stones, the whispering translated his meaning directly into Elara's mind, a gentle current of understanding. A listener, Fimble's presence in her mind was a mix of curiosity and ancient wisdom. We felt you coming, the whispering stirs. It has chosen well. Elara, surprised to understand, could only manage a faint, Who are you? I am Fimble, a glimmerwort, the creature chirped, doing a small formal bow that made his mushroom crown wobble. Guardian of the Whispering Woods, we know of the Hearthstone. We feel its fading light. It makes the moss grow tired. The flowers dream less brightly. He looked at her with an expression that held both solemnity and a spark of mischief. You understand the whispering. Few do, truly listen. It is a gift, and now, a burden. It told me to seek the echoing grotto, Elara said, her voice a little shaky, but gaining strength. Do you know where it is? Fimble nodded, or rather, his whole body seemed to vibrate with affirmation. The echoing grotto is the oldest mouth of the whispering. It is where the ancient voices sleep awaiting a listener. It is deep within the shimmering falls, beyond the sunken glade. He hopped onto her satchel, his light weight barely noticeable. I will guide you, listener. For the moss, for the flowers, for the Hearthstone of Eldoria. With Fimble now her tiny moss-green companion, Elara felt a renewed surge of purpose. The fear was still there, a low thrum beneath her determination, but it was no longer overwhelming. She had a guide, a companion who understood the magic she was now entwined with. They journeyed for what felt like days, though Elara lost track of time in the embrace of the Whispering Woods. Fimble, despite his small size, was an indefatigable guide, darting ahead, then waiting patiently for her to catch up. He pointed out things she had never noticed before, trees whose bark pulsed with faint blue light, flowers that opened only to the moon, and whispered secrets to the night air. streams that sang ancient lullabies as they flowed over iridescent pebbles. The woods slowly began to change. The trees grew taller, their branches interlacing to form a living cathedral ceiling, dappled with sunlight. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else, something fresh and sparkling. They were approaching the shimmering falls. Elara heard it before she saw it, a soft, melodious rush of water, growing in volume until it filled the air with its enchanting music. When they emerged from the final curtain of ancient vines, she gasped. Before her stretched a sight of breathtaking beauty. The shimmering falls was not a single cascade, but a series of gentle waterfalls that tumbled down a terraced cliff face, each tear catching the light differently. The water itself wasn't clear, but shimmered with every color imaginable, a living rainbow. As it fell, it created rainbows that hung perpetually in the air, arching over pools of water that glowed with soft internal light. It was a place of pure, undiluted magic. The whispering here was stronger than anywhere else, almost a tangible presence, like a soft invisible mist that settled on her skin. It wasn't just a hum now, but a complex symphony of gentle tones, each note carrying a fragment of knowledge, a whisper of ancient lore. As Elara stood, mesmerized, the whispering began to teach her. It wasn't a lesson with words, but an intuitive understanding that bloomed in her mind. She learned to listen not just to the general hum, but to the individual voices within it. The voice of the water, the voice of the ancient stones, the voice of the air itself. She closed her eyes, and the world dissolved into a tapestry of sound and feeling. The water spoke of journeys, of cleansing, of the deep currents of magic that flowed beneath the land. The stones spoke of patience, of memory, of the slow, enduring pulse of the earth. The air spoke of freedom, of messages carried on the wind, of the breath of life that sustained all things. Through this profound immersion, Elara understood more about the Hearthstone. It wasn't merely a stone, but the very nexus of life and magic, a cosmic anchor that drew its power from the deepest wellsprings of the world and diffused it outwards, sustaining all living things. Its dimming was not just a symbol, but a physical weakening of the magic that made the grass green, the rivers flow, and dreams come true. It was a slow, creeping slumber that threatened to blanket the world in a quiet, joyless dusk. The echoing grotto is behind the largest fall, Fimble chirped, pulling gently on a strand of her hair, bringing her back to the physical world. But the way is often guarded. Elara opened her eyes, seeing the world with a new clarity. The colors of the falls were more vibrant, the air hummed with a palpable energy. She followed Fimble, who led her towards the largest, central cascade. As they drew closer, a new obstacle became apparent. A thicket of ancient thorny vines, as thick as a grown man's arm, pulsed with a dull, unhappy magic, blocking the entrance to a dark opening behind the falling water. They weren't aggressive, not truly, but tangled and heavy, forming an impenetrable barrier. "These are the grief thorns," Fimble explained, his luminous eyes dimmed slightly. "They have grown here since the first diminishment of the Hearthstone's light. They feed on sorrow, and block the way to prevent further pain, in their own misguided way." Elara reached out a cautious hand, her fingers hovering inches from the sharp, wicked thorns. Using her newfound listening ability, she focused on the vines. She felt a deep ache within them, a silent cry of neglect and fear, a tangled knot of old sorrows. They weren't malicious, but rather suffering, reacting to the encroaching darkness of the Hearthstone. She closed her eyes again, and a gentle hum rose from her lips, a soft, wordless melody that seemed to rise from the very core of her being, guided by the whispering. It was a song of comfort, of understanding, of shared empathy. She poured all her quiet listening, all her new awareness, into the melody. As she sang, she slowly, tentatively, extended her hand, letting her fingers brush against the outermost thorns. The thorns, instead of pricking her, softened. Their dull, unhappy glow subsided, replaced by a faint, shimmering green. Slowly, impossibly, the thicket began to part. The massive vines, which had seemed so formidable, gracefully unwound themselves, creating a narrow, arching pathway directly into the dark opening behind the waterfall. Elara opened her eyes, breathless. Fimble, perched on her shoulder, let out a delighted series of chirps and clacks. "You truly are a listener, Elara." The grief thorns have not parted for generations. A surge of warmth, of quiet triumph, filled Elara. She had done something, not by fighting, but by listening and understanding. This journey was not about brute strength or clever tricks, but about connection and empathy. With a new sense of confidence, she stepped through the parted thorns and into the cool, damp darkness behind the falls, the roaring water now a muffled rumble. The passage led into a wide cavern, lit by the faint phosphorescent glow of moss and crystalline formations. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing softly. This was the echoing grotto. In the center stood a colossal, ancient stone worn smooth by eons, covered in intricate swirling carvings. It wasn't glowing, but it seemed to absorb the ambient light, giving it a profound, almost hungry presence. The whispering here was a crescendo, a chorus of voices rising and falling, forming a complex tapestry of sound and meaning. Elara approached the stone, placing her hand on its cool, smooth surface. Immediately, the voices intensified, not in her mind, but as if the grotto itself was speaking. She heard the stories of the first listeners, ancient beings who had communed with the Hearthstone in ages past. She heard tales of Eldoria, a vast and magical land that stretched far beyond Hearthlight Valley. And then, the urgent message returned, clearer now. Hearthstone's core is veiled. A shard of its light, broken long ago, must be reunited. It lies within the gloaming peaks, guarded by the eldest of the Skyweavers. Find the Skyweaver's nest. Return the shard of dawn. Nyana. Concerning Hearthlight. The shard of dawn, Elara whispered, the words feeling ancient and powerful on her tongue. It was a tangible goal, a clear path. The gloaming peaks are far, Finbald chirped, landing on the ancient stone beside her hand. And high. The path is difficult, and the air thin. But the Skyweavers are wise if solitary. Elara nodded, her gaze already turning towards the unseen mountains. The whispering still hummed around her, a constant comforting presence. She pulled her hand from the stone, feeling the echo of ancient voices within her. Their journey from the shimmering falls took them through a changing landscape. The lush, verdant forests slowly gave way to rolling hills, then to rocky outcrops and sparse, wind-sculpted trees. The air grew cooler, thinner, and the scent of pine was replaced by the clean, crisp smell of rock and distant snow. Elara found herself relying more and more on her senses, sharpened by the whispering. It guided her steps, pointing out faint trails that only appeared at twilight or patches of glowing lichen that marked safe passages over crumbling scree. Finbald, despite his forest origins, proved to be an agile mountaineer, scampering up steep inclines and finding hidden crevices to rest. They passed through the Singing Caves, a series of vast, echoing caverns carved into the mountainside. Here, mineral formations pulsed with faint internal light, and when the wind blew just right, they hummed with a low, resonant tone. The whispering within these hums was like a library of ancient stories. Elara would sit, her hand pressed against the cool crystalline walls, and listen. She learned of the first guardians of the Hearthstone, not just listeners but beings of earth and sky who had dedicated their lives to its care. She learned of a time when the world had been brighter, when magic flowed freely and openly, before the Hearthstone's first distant dimming. One evening, as the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange, they encountered a new guardian. High on a desolate ridge, a creature sat, its form like a moss-covered boulder, its eyes like ancient, polished agates. It moved slowly, speaking in a gravelly rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very earth. This was Stonebeard, a boulder gnome, one of the oldest beings of the gloaming peaks. "You seek the Skyweavers," Stonebeard rumbled, his voice like rocks tumbling down a slope. "The path to them is not for the faint of heart, nor for those who do not understand the breath of the mountain." Elara, feeling a new confidence after her success at the Shimmering Falls, stepped forward. "We seek the shard of dawn to rekindle the Hearthstone. The whispering has guided me." Stonebeard fixed his ancient gaze upon her. "The mountain values truth and perseverance. It tests those who would claim its secrets. Tell me, listener, what is the mountain's greatest strength and its greatest weakness?" Elara paused, considering. She closed her eyes, letting the whispering flow through her, letting it touch the very stone on which Stonebeard sat. She felt the mountain's immense, unyielding strength, its patience, its silent wisdom. But she also felt its solitude, its slow, inexorable erosion, its vulnerability to the shifting winds and the relentless march of time. Its greatest strength, Elara finally said, her voice clear and steady, is its enduring patience, its silent witness to all ages, and its greatest weakness is its loneliness. It yearns for connection, for the whispers of life upon its slopes. Stonebeard blinked, his agate eyes softening slightly. A faint, earthy chuckle rumbled from deep within his stony chest. A wise answer, listener. Few see beyond the rock and the cold. You have indeed listened well to the mountain's heart. He slowly extended a gnarled, stone-like hand. Take this. In his palm lay a small iridescent pebble, glowing with a faint, internal blue light. This is a sky stone. It will guide your steps when the mists obscure the path, and it will keep your heart warm when the mountain winds bite. With a grateful nod, Elara took the sky stone. It felt cool and smooth in her hand, emitting a comforting, gentle warmth. Stonebeard then pointed with a moss-covered finger towards a narrow, almost invisible trail, winding up the steepest face of the peak before them. That is the ascent of dreams. It leads to the Sky Weaver's eyrie. May the mountain grant you safe passage. The ascent of dreams was indeed challenging. The path was steep, often disappearing into swirling mists that clung to the peaks like shrouds. But with the sky stone glowing softly in her hand, pulsing gently in the direction of the next step, Elara felt guided and protected. Fimbul, too, seemed to draw strength from the mountain air, his chirps echoing with renewed energy. There were moments of doubt when the sheer scale of the peaks felt overwhelming, and the wind howled like a mournful spirit. But each time, Elara would press the sky stone to her chest, and the whispering would rise within her, a quiet reassurance that she was on the right path, that her purpose was true. She spoke to Fimbul more, sharing her thoughts, her fears, her growing wonder at the world. She was no longer just listening. She was conversing, sharing, leading. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of climbing, they reached the highest ridge. The air was thin and crisp, carrying the scent of ozone and distant cloud. Before them, nestled into a vast natural amphitheater at the very summit of the tallest peak, was a sight that took Elara's breath away. It was not a nest of sticks and leaves, but a sprawling complex of shimmering, crystalline structures woven from strands of pure light. They pulsed with a gentle ethereal glow, resembling colossal spiderwebs spun from starlight and moonlight. This was the Sky Weaver's eyrie. The whispering here was a symphony of light and sound, vibrating through the very air, pulling her forward with an almost irresistible force. Elara looked at Fimbul, his tiny form silhouetted against the incredible spectacle. His luminous eyes shone with reverence. She clutched the sky stone, its warmth a comfort against the chill mountain air. Her heart still held a tremor of fear, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of purpose, a burning determination to complete her task. Taking a deep breath, Elara adjusted her satchel and stepped forward onto the shimmering ancient pathway that led directly into the heart of the Sky Weaver's incredible dwelling, ready for whatever wonders or challenges awaited her within. The shimmering pathway beneath Elara's feet wasn't merely light. It was condensed starlight, cool and solid, humming with a gentle thrum that resonated deep within her bones. Each step was cushioned, as if she walked on a cloud spun from nebulae. The path curved, winding gracefully upwards, spiraling towards an immense archway that seemed to breathe with living color. It wasn't carved stone, but solidified aurora, a colossal gateway of swirling emerald, sapphire, and amethyst, constantly shifting and flowing like a silent cosmic river. As she approached, the air grew thick with a scent she couldn't quite place, like ozone after a summer storm, mixed with the crisp fragrance of mountain pines, and something else, something ancient and sweet, like dried moonlight. The hum beneath her feet intensified, a lullaby of cosmic engines, and she felt a subtle pressure, not menacing, but like the gentle touch of unseen hands guiding her forward. She passed beneath the aurora arch, and the world shifted. The vast open sky she had left behind was gone, replaced by an interior so grand, so utterly breathtaking, it stole the very breath from her lungs. She stood in what could only be described as a celestial cavern, but it was no natural rock formation. The walls soared upwards, disappearing into a vaulted ceiling so high it seemed to pierce the heavens themselves, yet it was enclosed. And everywhere, was light. Not harsh, blinding light, but a soft, pervasive luminescence that emanated from the very structure of the chamber. The walls were not stone, but intricate tapestries woven from pure starlight. These weren't static images, they were living, breathing murals. Constellations pulsed with their own inner fire, nebulae swirled in slow-motion dances of cosmic dust, and distant galaxies spiraled lazily, their myriad stars like glittering grains of sand. Elara saw familiar patterns, the Great Bear, the Hunter's Belt, but also constellations unknown to the surface world, complex geometries of light that depicted forgotten myths and unimaginable histories. A gentle breeze carrying the same sweet ancient scent brushed past her, causing the sky stone in her hand to pulse with a stronger, warmer glow. Its light, a soft azure, mingled with the cosmic display around her, adding its own vibrant hue to the celestial palette. She tightened her grip, a silent reassurance. This place was overwhelming, magnificent, but also profoundly serene. It felt like walking into the very dream of the universe. As her eyes adjusted to the boundless scope of the chamber, she noticed movement. Not the swirling stars on the walls, but figures. They drifted, rather than walked, through the vast space. Ethereal beings cloaked in robes that seemed woven from twilight and shadow. Their forms were indistinct, shimmering at the edges, as if they were not entirely solid, but rather concentrations of pure starlight and thought. They moved with an unhurried grace, their actions deliberate, their presence radiating an ancient wisdom that made Elara feel like a tiny flicker of a newly kindled flame. One of these beings, taller and more luminous than the others, detached itself from a cluster near a particularly vibrant tapestry depicting a supernova. It glided towards her, its movement so smooth it seemed to defy gravity. As it drew closer, Elara could discern features, though they were fluid and indistinct, eyes like distant twin stars, deep and knowing, set within a face that seemed to shift and reform with the play of light and shadow. It wore no expression, yet Elara felt no malice, only an intense, quiet observation. "Welcome, child of the earth," a voice resonated, not from a single point but from everywhere at once, a chorus of whispering starlight and deep-sea currents. It was a voice that echoed with the weight of ages, yet was as soft as a lullaby. "You have journeyed far, guided by the light seeker's call and the song of the stone." Elara, despite her earlier resolve, found herself speechless. She managed a small bow, clutching the sky stone. "I am Elara," she finally managed, her voice a reedy whisper in the grand chamber. "I have come seeking the sky weavers, the magic. It is fading." The luminous being tilted its head, a gesture that was both alien and strangely familiar. "We know, Elara of the earth. We have felt the weakening of the threads, the thinning of the veil. The song of the world grows faint." Its gaze, those twin star eyes, settled on the sky stone in her hand. "And we know of the sky stone, the heartlight of the first star. It has long been foretold that one from the surface world would bring it to us in a time of great need." "Then you can help?" Elara asked, a surge of hope, bright and warm, blossoming in her chest. "You can restore the magic." "Restore is a strong word, young one," the sky weaver replied, its voice still an omnipresent murmur. "We can guide, we can aid, we can mend the tears. But the spark, the will to reweave the world's song, must come from the Hearthlight and from Wanji." The sky weaver gestured with a hand that seemed to leave trails of shimmering dust. "Come. You have passed the threshold of wonder. Now you must pass the threshold of understanding. Follow Lyra, the weaver of whispers." Another figure, this one slightly smaller and with a more defined, though still ethereal, form, stepped forward from the shadows. Lyra's robes were the deep indigo of twilight, and her eyes, though also star-like, held a softer, more compassionate glow. "Walk with me, Elara." Lyra's voice was a gentler echo, like wind chimes catching a distant breeze. "There is much to see, and much to learn, before we can begin to mend the fading light." Elara nodded, her fear now almost completely eclipsed by a burgeoning sense of awe and purpose. She followed Lyra, leaving the grand entrance chamber behind, stepping into a narrow, winding corridor of luminous crystal. The crystal pulsed with a rhythmic beat, like a giant heart, and through its translucent walls, Elara could glimpse other chambers, other wonders, each more impossible than the last. Lyra led her through what seemed like an endless labyrinth of passages, each one distinct. One chamber was a garden of crystalline flora, where flowers bloomed with silent explosions of light, and trees branched into shimmering constellations. Another was a library, its shelves laden not with books, but with spheres of condensed knowledge, glowing softly, each containing the wisdom of an entire star system. Elara saw skyweavers immersed in these spheres, their forms flickering as they absorbed the information. Finally, Lyra brought her to a vast, circular chamber. In its center stood a colossal loom, not made of wood or metal, but of interwoven beams of pure light and solidified cosmic energy. It stretched from floor to ceiling, its threads not of wool or silk, but of shimmering, intangible filaments that hummed with immense power. These threads were the very fabric of existence, strands of time, ribbons of gravity, skeins of starlight, and shimmering currents of magic itself. Other skyweavers moved around the loom, their hands, though formless, deftly manipulating the threads. They weren't just weaving patterns, they were mending tears in the fabric of space, carefully adjusting the flow of celestial currents, and even, Elara realized with a gasp, coaxing nascent stars into being from clouds of stellar dust. This was the heart of their craft, the workshop where the universe itself was tended and maintained. "This is the Grand Loom," Lyra explained, her voice hushed with reverence. "It is where the song of the world is sung, where the symphony of the cosmos is composed. And it is here that the fading magic is most keenly felt." As Lyra spoke, Elara noticed it. Some of the threads of magic, those shimmering, iridescent filaments, were dull. Some were frayed, almost transparent. A few even seemed to be dissolving, creating small, almost imperceptible ripples in the surrounding cosmic tapestry. The vibrant hum of the loom faltered occasionally, replaced by a faint discordant whine. "The fading magic," Lyra continued, "is not merely a lack of power. It is a weakening of the very connections that bind reality. The threads of magic are not just energy. They are pathways, bridges between realms, links between the visible and the invisible, the mundane and the miraculous. When they fray, the world unravels slowly, subtly. The stars grew." Elara looked at the skystone in her hand. It pulsed more urgently now, as if sensing the profound imbalance. "How can it help?" she asked, her voice filled with quiet urgency. "What must I do?" Lyra stepped closer to the grand loom, her form shimmering as she touched one of the frayed magical threads. "The skystone is more than just a source of power, Elara. It is a harmonizer, a resonator, attuned to the very first note of creation's song. It can strengthen the connections, reweave the broken strands, and amplify the failing magic, but it cannot do so alone." Lyra turned to face Elara, her star-like eyes piercing. "Its power must be guided by a pure heart, a clear intention, and a deep understanding of the song. It needs to be placed at the nexus of the grand loom, at the very point where all the threads converge. But before you can do that, you must attune yourself to its rhythm, and to the rhythm of the loom itself." "How do I do that?" Elara asked, feeling a prickle of apprehension mixed with her determination. This wasn't just about placing a stone. It was about becoming part of something immense. "You must listen," Lyra said simply. "Listen with your heart, not just your ears. The loom sings, the skystone sings. You must find their harmony, their resonance. And to do that, you must understand the essence of their weaving." Lyra led Elara to a smaller, more intricate loom, set apart from the grand one. This one was woven not with cosmic threads, but with pure light. It stood at the edge of the chamber, bathed in a soft internal glow. "This is a learning loom," Lyra explained. "It mirrors the principles of the grand loom, but on a scale that a mortal mind can grasp. Your first trial, Elara, is to reweave a simple pattern of light, to understand how intent and focus can shape the unseen energies of the world." Elara looked at the loom. It was beautiful, its light threads shimmering in complex, geometric patterns. But how did one weave light? There were no shuttles, no pedals, no discernible controls. "Place your hands near the threads," Lyra instructed, her voice soft. "Feel their energy. Let your mind become quiet, receptive. Do not try to force them. Instead, imagining the pattern you wish to create. Let your will flow into the light, guided by the skystone." Taking a deep breath, Elara extended her hands, holding the sky stone between her palms. As her fingers neared the shimmering threads of light, she felt a tingling sensation, like static electricity but warmer, softer. She closed her eyes, recalling the intricate patterns she had seen on the celestial tapestries, the slow, graceful dance of nebulae. She thought of the way her grandmother had mended clothes, carefully pulling threads, weaving new ones to restore the fabric. She focused on a small section of the loom, imagining a simple spiral pattern, like a tiny galaxy. She felt the sky stone pulse in her hands, its warmth spreading up her arms, filling her with a gentle, focused energy. And then, as if by magic, the threads of light began to respond. They shifted, coalesced, and began to form the spiral she envisioned, glowing brighter as they intertwined. A gasp escaped her lips. She opened her eyes, amazed. A perfect miniature spiral of iridescent light now pulsed on the loom, exactly as she had imagined. "Excellent," Lyra murmured, a faint shimmer of approval radiating from her form. "You have the touch, Elara. You understand the fundamental principle, that thought and intention can shape energy, but this is just the beginning. Now, you must learn to mend." Lyra pointed to a section of the learning loom where a single thread of light seemed to be fading, its glow flickering, almost winking out of existence. "This thread represents a minor imbalance, a weakened connection. Your task is to restore its vibrancy, to reweave its strength, using the sky stone as your guide." Elara focused again, her heart beating a steady rhythm. She imagined warmth, flow, connection. She sent her will into the fading thread, channeling the sky stone's energy. At first, nothing happened. The thread continued to flicker. Doubt began to creep in. Was she doing it wrong? "Remember," Lyra's voice echoed gently, "it is not about force. It is about harmony. The thread is not broken. It is simply tired. It needs to be reminded of its own song, its own purpose." Elara paused, took another deep breath. She thought about the fading magic in her world, the slow decay, the quiet sadness. She remembered the urgency in her grandmother's voice, the fear in the villagers' eyes. This wasn't just a pattern of light. It was a symbol of what she had come to fix. She didn't just want to fix it. She wanted to wheel it, to remind it of its true, vibrant nature. She poured not just her will, but her empathy, her longing for restoration, into the sky stone. She imagined the thread glowing, becoming strong and bright again, not just by her command, but by its own renewed essence. And this time, it worked. Slowly, gradually, the flickering thread began to regain its luster. It pulsed with a renewed, steady glow, shining as brightly as its neighbors. A profound sense of accomplishment washed over Elara, deeper than any she had felt before. This wasn't just magic. It was understanding, a connection to the very pulse of creation. "You are learning quickly, Elara," Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "Your heart is true, and your connection to the sky stone is strong. Now, we must move to the next stage. The grand loom holds not just light, but the very essence of the world's magic. To attune yourself to it, you must understand the flow of these energies, their currents and their eddies." Lyra led Elara out of the learning chamber and into another passage, this one even more wondrous. It was like walking through a cosmic river. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made of pure flowing energy, rippling with iridescent colors. Elara felt currents of magic washing over her, cool and invigorating, carrying whispers of distant stars and echoes of forgotten spells. "This is the river of unbound magic," Lyra explained, her voice soft. "It flows from the heart of the grand loom, carrying the raw, untamed essence of creation. Here, you must learn to navigate its currents, to feel its power without being overwhelmed. The sky stone will protect you, but you must guide it." As they moved deeper, the currents grew stronger, swirling around Elara, tugging at her senses. She felt the immense power of it, enough to reshape worlds, enough to unravel her very being. But the sky stone in her hand pulsed with a steady, reassuring warmth, forming a protective aura around her. It didn't block the magic, but harmonized it, allowing her to perceive its raw beauty without being consumed. Lyra stopped at a point where the river split into multiple smaller streams, each flowing with a different hue and intensity. "Each stream carries a different aspect of magic," Lyra explained. The emerald stream carries the magic of growth and life. The sapphire stream, the magic of thought and insight. The ruby stream, the magic of fire and transformation. And the silver stream, the magic of dreams and illusion. The fading magic, Lyra continued, is affecting all of these streams, but not equally. Some are weaker than others. Your task here, Elara, is to use the sky stone to sense the most depleted stream, and to gently, through your intention, direct a small surge of energy from the sky stone into it, much like you rewove the light thread. Elara concentrated. She closed her eyes again, letting her other senses take over. She felt the individual currents, like distinct voices in a choir. The emerald stream felt sluggish, almost heavy. The sapphire stream was thin, reedy DIY. The ruby stream flickered faintly. But the silver stream, the magic of dreams and illusion, felt the weakest of all, almost a whisper, barely discernible amidst the others. The silver stream, Elara whispered, opening her eyes. The magic of dreams and illusion. It feels almost empty. Lyra nodded slowly. Indeed. For when hope fades, so too do dreams. And when the world loses its wonder, illusions become mere tricks, rather than gateways to deeper truths. Now, channel the sky stone. Send its pure energy into that depleted stream. Do not force it, but invite it to flow, to replenish. Elara focused on the silver stream. She imagined a shimmering cascade of the sky stone's azure light flowing into it, mingling with its faint silver, making it brighter, stronger, more vibrant. She poured all her desire for wonder, for renewed hope, for the return of joyous dreams into the stone. She felt a profound connection, as if her own heart's longing was flowing into the river of magic. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the silver stream began to brighten. Its faint shimmer deepened, becoming a rich, flowing current of liquid moonlight. The whispers it carried grew stronger, clearer, filled with images of soaring flight and fantastic beasts and impossible landscapes. It was the sound of dreams being born anew. Lyra laid a hand, cool and ethereal, on Elara's shoulder. You have done well, Elara. You possess a rare gift, not just for channeling magic, but for understanding it, for connecting with its very essence. The sky stone has chosen wisely. But this is just a small stream, Elara said, looking at the immense grand loom in the distance. How can I mend the whole world's magic? Patience, young one, Lyra replied, her voice filled with gentle reassurance. Each step strengthens you, prepares you. You have learned to shape light, to mend small tears, and to replenish specific currents. Now, you must learn to attune your own inner light to the sky stone, to become its perfect conduit. For the final task, the mending of the grand loom, will require not just the stone's power, but your own unwavering heart. Lyra led Elara to a small, isolated alcove within the vast dwelling. It was a place of quiet contemplation, a circular chamber formed from smooth, dark obsidian, with a single glowing crystal suspended in its center. The crystal pulsed with a soft internal light, like a captive star. Here, Lyra instructed, you will meditate. You will sit before the crystal of inner harmony, and you will let the sky stone guide you to the deepest part of your own being. You must find the wellspring of your own courage, your own purpose, your own light, for the sky stone will amplify whatever is within you. If there is doubt, it will amplify doubt. If there is fear, it will amplify fear. But if there is unwavering conviction and pure intention, it will amplify that ethereal soundful. Elara sat on the cool obsidian floor, facing the glowing crystal. She held the sky stone in her lap, its warmth a familiar comfort. Lyra left her alone, her ethereal form fading into the shadows, leaving Elara in the profound stillness of the chamber. Elara closed her eyes, focusing on the sky stone. She felt its familiar hum, its steady pulse. She thought of her journey, of her grandmother, of the fading world, and of the immense responsibility now placed upon her. Fear, a cold tendril, tried to coil around her heart. But she pushed it away, remembering the Sky Weaver's trust, the feeling of purpose that had burned within her since she first saw the stone. She pictured her own heart, not as a physical organ, but as a source of light within her. At first, it was a small, flickering flame. But as she concentrated, As she let go of her anxieties and embraced her determination, the flame grew. It became a steady golden glow, spreading through her chest, down her limbs, filling her with a quiet, potent energy. The sky stone in her lap resonated with this inner light, its azure glow deepening, becoming richer, more vibrant. Hours passed, or perhaps moments. Time seemed to lose all meaning in the Sky Weaver's dwelling. Elara remained in her meditative state, her inner light merging with the Sky Stone's power, until she felt them as one, a single flowing current of pure, focused intent. She felt utterly connected, not just to the stone, but to the dwelling, to the river of unbound magic, to the grand loom itself. She was no longer just Elara, the girl from the mountain village. She was a conduit, a vessel for the world's hope. When Lyra finally returned, her form shimmered with a soft, appreciative light. "You have found your center, Elara," she said, her voice a gentle caress. "Your light shines brightly, a perfect match for the Hearthlight of the first star. You are ready." Elara opened her eyes. She felt different. Not physically stronger, but imbued with an inner strength, a calm resolve that had replaced all lingering fear. The Sky Stone now felt like an extension of herself, pulsing in perfect rhythm with her own heart. Lyra led her back to the grand loom. The sheer scale of it was still daunting, but now, Elara saw it not just as a complex machine, but as a living entity, its threads singing a silent song of creation and decay. She could sense the areas of weakness more acutely now, the dull threads, the frayed edges, the silent discords. "The center of the loom," Lyra explained, pointing to a swirling vortex of energy at the very nexus where all the threads converged, "is where the song of the world is most concentrated. It is here that the Sky Stone must be placed. It will act as a tuning fork, resonating with the very first note of creation, and reharmonizing the entire loom. But the fading magic has created a barrier, a shield of discord around the core. You must pierce it, not with force." Elara looked at the swirling vortex. It pulsed with a chaotic energy, a mix of vibrant colors and dull grays, a manifestation of the world's imbalance. It looked impenetrable, almost hostile. "This will be your greatest challenge, Elara," Lyra said, her voice serious now. "You must step into the heart of the discord and let your light, guided by the Sky Stone, overcome the fading. It will test your resolve, your focus, and your belief in the possibility of restoration. Are you ready, child of the earth, to reweave the song?" Elara clutched the Sky Stone, its warmth a beacon against the cool, chaotic energy emanating from the loom's core. She looked at the Sky Weavers, their luminous forms gathered around the vast chamber, their star-like eyes fixed upon her, a silent chorus of hope and expectation. She took a deep breath, feeling her own inner light merge with the stone's, creating a brilliant, steady glow that emanated from her very being. "I am ready," she declared, her voice ringing clear and strong, filled with a power she hadn't known she possessed. She stepped forward onto the shimmering, ancient pathway that led directly into the heart of the grand loom's swirling, discordant core, ready for whatever wonders or challenges awaited her within. The pathway dissolved behind her, leaving Elara suspended in a vast, echoing chamber of shifting light and sound. Thousands upon thousands of luminous threads, spun from the very fabric of dreams and starlight, crisscrossed the expanse. But they were not orderly. Some glowed with brilliant, joyful hues, emerald green, sapphire blue, sunlit gold, while others pulsed with anxious reds, murky grays, and fading purples. They tangled, snarled, and snapped, creating a cacophony of whispers, jumbled melodies, and sharp, dissonant chords. This was the grand loom, the very engine of the waking world's imagination and the sleeping world's dreams, and it was in disarray. At the heart of the maelstrom, a colossal, crystalline spindle spun wildly, throwing sparks of raw emotion and fractured thought into the chaos. Elara understood now. The loom wasn't broken. It was overwhelmed, its threads of possibility hopelessly knotted by the fears and anxieties of the world, amplified by a forgotten lullaby that had ceased to sing. Her Dreamweaver stone pulsed warmly in her hand, its glow steady and calming against the frantic energy. She raised it, and a shimmering cord of pure clear light emanated from the stone, touching the nearest tangled threads. Instantly, the frantic movement slowed, the harsh colors softened, and a single, pure note resonated through the chamber. Inspired, Elara extended her hands, her own inner light flowing through her fingertips. She didn't try to force the threads apart, but rather, she listened. She listened to the whisper of a forgotten laugh, the hum of a lost hope, the quiet sigh of a dream longing to be born. With gentle movements, guided by an intuition that felt as old as the loom itself, she began to untangle. She pulled apart a snarled knot of worry with a thread of courage, wove a shimmering strand of wonder through a dull patch of routine, and mended a broken pattern of ambition with the silver gleam of compassion. Each touch, each gentle pull, each whispered intention, sent ripples of harmony through the loom. The discordant sounds began to blend, forming new, beautiful harmonies. The clashing colors flowed into intricate, mesmerizing tapestries. Finally, she reached the colossal spindle. It throbbed with a dull, despairing pulse. Elara realized it wasn't fear, but loneliness. It needed a song. Closing her eyes, she remembered the forgotten lullaby she had been seeking. It wasn't a complex tune, but a simple, heartfelt melody, full of comfort and promise. She began to hum, her voice soft at first, then growing stronger, weaving her own heart's song into the very air. The Dreamweaver's stone pulsed in perfect sync with her voice. Why? As the lullaby filled the chamber, the wild spinning of the spindle began to slow. The fractured light coalesced into a radiant, steady beam. The threads, once chaotic, now danced in perfect synchronicity, forming a breathtaking, living tapestry that unfolded infinitely in all directions. The air filled, not with jumbled noise, but with the grand symphonic hum of creation, the gentle whisper of every dream finding its place, every hope its path. Elara felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The burden she hadn't even known she carried lifted. The grand loom, once a place of frantic energy, now breathed with a quiet, joyful majesty. She had not only repaired it but had awakened something within herself, a deep connection to the magic of creation, the power of gentle intention. The shimmering pathway reappeared, glowing with a soft, inviting warmth. She stepped back onto it, leaving the now harmonious grand loom humming softly behind her. As she emerged, the forest around her seemed to shimmer with a newfound clarity. The leaves rustled with a peaceful song, the starlight felt brighter, and the air itself hummed with a quiet magic. The Dreamweaver's stone, its task complete, settled gently back into its place within her pendant, its light now a steady, comforting warmth against her skin. Elara felt tired, but it was a sweet, fulfilling tiredness. She knew that the dreams born from the grand loom would now be clearer, brighter, filled with more hope and less fear. And she knew that a little piece of that harmonious magic would forever live within her. Back in her own soft bed, the moonbeams now painted silver stripes across her quilt. Elara closed her eyes, the gentle hum of the world a lullaby in her ears. She drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, ready to dream beautiful dreams, knowing that she had helped the world dream them too. Good night, little dreamer. May your own dreams be as bright and harmonious as Elara's journey.